Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%.
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
With Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. I have a very exciting guest today, KC Owens. She's the founder of Tattle Tail Scent Dogs. You know, in my family, my daughter has a service dog that is trained on Diabetic Alert. So I think this is going to be a really great call, and I'm very excited to speak to her. So how you doing, KC?
I'm doing well, and you?
Good. I'm very glad to speak to you. Well, tell me a bit about your background, and then we'll talk about Tattle Tails and what it does.
Okay. Well, I was a social worker for 30 years working with homeless and low-income folks here in Salt Lake, but my love and passion has always been animals and especially dogs. I grew up on a farm in Missouri, and we had dogs for just about every use you can imagine, from hog to cow to sheep. We had coyote hounds, coon hounds. We had pointers for upland dogs. And we had an occasional pet. So I literally grew up with dogs. I like dogs. And I was in my late 30s, and I've always stayed in the animal world. I got involved with AKC hunt test, field trials, obedience, rally, dock jumping. If it had to do with the dog, I just fell in love with it. But in my late 30s, I started having some health issues, and they kept telling me I was a type 2 and I needed to do this and do that. And I did all of that, and nothing changed. I had gone into my doctor, and my previous A1C was like 6.4 or something like that. And when I walked in, they did my A1C test again, and she promptly started yelling at me and told me that I had been lying to her, that I wasn't doing any of these things.
Right.
But yet I had lost almost 70 pounds, and could look at lettuce, and I mean literally almost look at it, and my blood sugars would jump up to the 200 and 300, and my A1C was right at 14. So after she got done kind of being angry at me, I said, "You're very unhelpful," and said, "You need to send me to somebody that is." And I walked into a endocrinology office to speak to an diabetic educator, and several questions were asked, and I told her what was going on, and they ran more tests, and I walked out of there holding insulin, syringes, and told that there's a very good likelihood that, no, I'm really not a type 2, I'm a type 1, and just late onset. Now, I don't know anything about anything. You know, I'm just a kid from Missouri, but it's my body, and I want to I want to manage this. Also, about that same time, my father had passed away from diabetic complications, and my older sister was going through massive heart stuff.
Yeah, that probably really worried you, all this going on at once.
Yeah, there was a lot going on, but the interesting part of what happened was I am just like, I don't know. So I started researching and started looking into what this is, what can I do about it, blah, 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 blah. Well, one day I was sitting on my couch in the front room, and I had two dogs at the time. One of them's name was Chevelle, and the other one's name was Bravo. And Chevelle was about he would have been 4 or 5-year-old chocolate lab. And I had maybe an 18-month-old Chesapeake Bay Retriever. Now, both of these dogs, even if they're young, are still very well-trained, very obedient dogs because I'd been around the dog world quite a bit. And I'm sitting on this couch, and the lab jumps up on the couch. And normally my dogs ask for permission. Oh, can I get up on the couch? Can I get loving? But that day he just jumped up, and he didn't ask for permission. He just literally flopped over. And I thought, that's kind of weird, but okay, I'll pet you. He had just gotten settled in, and the young Chesapeake walked up to me, put his head on my knee, backed up, and patted his front feet, which up until this point, it has met a lady. I got to go pee. Would you let me outside?
Right.
So I say to Chevelle, off. And he looks at me with the weirdest eyes and just goes, and I said, off. And he gave me the, again. And I said, okay. And I stood up, just pushed him onto the floor, went to the back door. That dog, I opened the door, and the dog just sat there and looked at me. And I thought, holy cow, what's going on here? You don't want to go? Great. I go back, sit down again. This repeats a second time. I again go to the door. It then repeats a third time. And the third time, when I pushed the older dog onto the floor, the young dog, who was very tall and very lanky, jumped up and put his front feet on my shoulders and looked me dead in the eyes. And at that exact moment, I felt a low blood sugar. And I thought, all right. So I reach over, I grab my kit, and I was in the low 60s, I think. And I went to the kitchen, I got a juice, and I am sitting here looking at these two dogs going, did that just happen? Is it possible that a dog can smell this low blood sugar? I'm very confident they all smell highs. I mean, I was warned about that as a child and being around hogs, that you don't go in with an open wound because of the smell of blood.
What happens if you do? They attack you or something?
Yeah, they'll probably try to eat you.
Really?
Really. And the next piece that happened was I remembered my grandfather saying, yeah, animals do not like high blood sugars. When you smell like rotten fruit, most animals don't like you. Okay, so what do I know? I'm just a kid from Missouri. So I go get this juice, and I'm sitting there on the couch, and I'm watching these dogs. And I'm thinking, can this happen? So I started doing some research. At that point, there was one company doing Diabetic Alert Dogs, and they were located in California, and they would not talk to anyone outside of the state of California.
Oh, they were afraid of being accused of practicing medicine when they weren't licensed or something?
I don't know. I know they wouldn't even tell me that. They just say, I'm not in their state. I said, all right, I'm a good dog trainer. I can figure this out. It's not rocket science. It's about reading dogs. It's about understanding their language of communication and working within their boundaries of how we can make this happen. So back then, you had to write down every time you checked your blood sugar. They didn't have, the early Dexcoms were just coming out. And so I reached over, I got my thing, and I got into the habit of blood sugar 130, dogs sleeping. Blood sugar 225, Bravo laying across the room glaring at me, Cheveo trying to pin me to whatever I'm sitting on or to get me to sit down. 82, Bravo is in my face, often panting, often making intenser eye contact. Cheveo still wants to pin me to everything. This went on for, I don't know, a month or two where I just kept notes. And there became a pattern of what my dogs were doing when my blood sugars were 90 and less and above 180 most of the time, but never missing anything above about a 210.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, now I know they know something, but what do they know? Nobody could tell me. What are they picking up on? So I went back to some old dusty library books and started trying to figure out what is happening in the body with lows and what is happening in the body with highs and how magnified that becomes as you start into DKA. And then here's the answer. A little thing called ketones. And a ketone is nothing more than something that causes another action to happen as I understand it. I'm not well-versed in medical. I tend to put everything into layman's English, but that makes sense to me. But my next question was, is there different ketones involved with a low, a high, and shifting into DKA?
Diabetic ketoacidosis, you mean DKA?
Right. So that started a whole journey into a world that I didn't really ever want to know about. But, okay, but it's also going to cause me to watch what's going on with the dogs. I decided I was going to teach. After I recognized they were doing it, it became just a matter of a very short time where if I noticed Bravo in particular, if he moved away and would not advance to me, it was a high alert. And if he was in my space and in my face, it was a low alert. I could put that together, but that doesn't meet the ADA definition of a trained task. So I took it a step further. When I observed that, I said, go get my meter. And he would walk over to my TV stand and grab my meter and bring it to me. And he got very, very good. Anytime my numbers were out of range, he would go get that meter and bring it to me. If I was really low, he actually threw it at me. But that's okay. But I thought, well, if he knows to go get it above those numbers or below those numbers, he has to be able to smell, if you will, that there's a difference.
Right.
What is it they're picking up on? I do not know. I have asked around several times what ketones are involved in this. You'll get a lot of answers, and most of them with words that I didn't really understand. But one of the people finally said there are 4 ketones that are released when we're low. I don't remember all of them. One of them is acetone. Okay, well, that makes sense. Is that also released with a high? No. Is this released with a high? No. Okay, so there is differences. So I, again, took my meter and my numbers, and I decided that I would chain together an alert process. He smells something. He goes and grabs something to tell me, my meter. I wonder if he will differentiate. So I started off teaching him a bow for a low and a wave or a bop with his paw for a high. Well, apparently the dog might be smarter than me because he recognized that me as a dog person, I don't pay a bit of attention to dogs that are stretching on the floor in front of me. So he literally did this part of it on his own. he switched them. He started using that paw for a low alert because he knew it irritated the snot out of me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes with their nails, when they paw you, it's like, house.
And yeah. And then he would bow for a high. He got very reliable at it. Like to the point where when I checked my numbers of my written numbers against his alerting, anything underneath 80, he was between 95 and 100%, and the same above 200. Now, at 90, he started getting into the 85 to 90% range, but he was better accurate at night than he was during the day. So my goals, well, there's a lot more things that happen during the day. There's more things to go smell, introduce yourself to. And at night, it's quiet, and it kind of just gradually gets into that brain. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So out of that, I learned that alerting starts with, hey, there's a problem. I need to tell you there is a problem. Then I need to go to number 2. What is the problem? Well, my original thinking was what is the problem was going and grabbing my meter. We took that a step further and got it to where he would paw me for a low and bow for a high. And I thought it was pretty cool and pretty amazing. And, you know, I'm at hunt test and my dog is doing all these fantastic alerts in front of other, people that are in their own right, very good dog trainers. And they are just amazed. And then the phone calls started. And the phone calls were parents of children that had not had a full night's sleep since diagnosis, because many times with especially diabetes, and I'm sure other childhood illnesses, the parents somehow take on that they are at fault and responsible. And no matter how much you love your child, no matter how much you care, unfortunately, you're never going to be as good as a fully working pancreas. And you're going to be judged for that. And they're judged for it.
What do you mean? You mean kids that have type 1 diabetes?
Yep.
Or high A1C, so they're judged as like being lazy, like you were, like, oh, you're lazy, you're not listening, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. When in reality, that may or may not be the case. Sometimes it is. I'm not going to blow smoke up anybody's skirt about that, but sometimes that's exactly. They don't take it by the horns and go on. So, but it touched me, listening to parents of kids 3 and under, and, they don't recognize when the kid's low or high, but hearing from an adult and hearing an adult put into words what it's like to be low, what it's like to be high. And then also just seeing the sheer exhaustion on their face. And so they said, would you teach me what you know? And I'm looking, going, I'm just me. I'm not, I like dogs. I love dogs. I want to help people, but I don't think I'm qualified to do this. Yes, help me. So that is where Tattle Tales started. And it started because somebody once said, Casey, make this your swing back at this disease. And that's what I did. I can't fix the diabetic industry. That's somewhere around $600 billion. And I would love to say they want a cure, because in talking to diabetics around the world, almost every one of us has been told that there will be a cure in the next 10 years at diagnosis. And all of us, many of us have become jaded, and to the fact that unfortunately they don't want a cure. They want to give us another gizmo so that they can make more money.
Right, I gotcha.
Dog's love and a dog's devotion is free for the earning. If you are willing to go to their level, learn their communication, and learn some things about dogs. So that is how I started Tattle Tales.
Okay. You said dogs don't like high blood sugar. How did you figure that out? Like, how do they seem to respond to high and low blood sugar? Does low blood sugar frighten them?
Have you ever been around a high blood sugar or somebody that's in DKA?
Not DKA, but high blood sugar. I've had myself sometimes, and low feels like you're sweating.
Yeah, it
And
feels
like kind of like you're gonna pass out, and you're just like, oh, I don't feel good. And high it's hard to describe. It's like,
you're crabby, you're cranky, and everything irritates the snot out of you.
yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yeah, you just feel also you feel sluggish and just like exhausted too. I felt like that before.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, you respond to being that tired with just, I'm frustrated, I'm irritated.
Yeah.
But anybody that has ever been around really high blood sugars, if you talk to nurses or doctors and they walk into a room, you can actually smell a high, an extreme high on humans.
Really? What does it smell like? Like a sickly sweet odor or something?
Yes, very sickly sweet. Have you ever walked through an orchard where the apples have fallen off and they're in the process of decay? And it's just got that, there's a sweet, once you smell it, you know it, but you can't really put words on it. But it has a very much of an odor. Growing up hunting and around animals, and being around other type 2 diabetics that were pretty much uncontrolled, you would hear them have conversations about making sure that they were upwind of the game. Because if they were, downwind of the game, because if they were upwind of the game, the animals would smell them. And it was always worse with the diabetics. Don't ask, it's just things that came together over the years.
Yeah, all of a sudden this realization came to you. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. And so now, I don't know, I'm going on at about 15 years doing Tattle Tails, over 400 service dogs later, with only 8 of them having ever come back or having had issues that I needed to intervene on. I feel pretty comfortable about this subject. And, I talk a lot about the science, but it's evolved now to, hey, Casey, do you think that dogs can alert on seizures? Absolutely they can.
Yeah, I've heard they can. Yeah, that's crazy.
But do we know what they're alerting on? No.
Right.
So how do we begin to figure that out? Because there's no money in figuring out what they're alerting on. There's only money in, trying to get us to keep going with that.
Why can't you, if someone has, like, for instance, high or low blood sugar, why couldn't you do an experiment where they blow into a device that saves their breath and then puts it through like a gas chromatograph or something, and then they can see what compounds are in it? Same thing for seizure alert.
I have no idea how to do all that, but I knew how to spit into a bottle, and I knew how to work with sweat, saliva, urine, and blood, because there is no pseudosense available to those with diabetes or seizures or cardiac. Now, you can get into some pseudosense with external scents like peanuts, gluten, assorted things that are external scent based, but we don't have that. So we have to work off of whatever we've got. And how are ketones moved around? Well, through our body system, which is sweat, fluid, all of that is going to play in. And that's exactly what I did, sir, was I just started using my saliva at first.
Yeah.
And have played an awful lot with a lot of different testing. And that's how I got to here. But now it's kind of evolved into some other things like seizures, heart, cortisol, because there is adrenaline in different adrenal glands. And the more rare it is, the more complicated it is to figure out, exactly what the dogs are hitting on. But you got to start with a good quality dog. And what happened in my situation was I fell into 2 dogs at the same time both had extremely high pack drive. And
They had high what?
pack drive.
What's that mean?
How much do they really care about what their human thinks? Are they a team player? These are high pack dogs.
They a team player?
Yeah.
I like that. I imagine them in like suits at the office, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you've ever had a really dog with a pretty good pack drive, these are the dogs that follow you everywhere.
Yeah, we have
What are you doing?
we have 4 dogs at home, and yeah, one of ours is an Australian Shepherd, and he worries about what the other ones are doing. Like if they're not doing the right thing, he'll try to pull them or herd them in the right direction or bite their leg.
Herding. That isn't necessarily as much pack. Now, there is components of pack in there. But this is a dog that genuinely wants to do something with you and for you.
Okay.
So I didn't realize until years later why Bravo got my attention on that back door and why he kept wanting to go out. I could understand Chevelle going, I care about you. I'm going to pin you to the couch. But why would the other one want to go outside? Well, about 5 years later, I finally figured it out. He was a very sensitive dog. He did not like it when I was upset. He didn't like it when I was ornery. He was very concerned, but he had figured out somehow through set that if he could get me to go into that kitchen where my back door is, I might grab something to eat and maybe be a better person.
It would be a what person?
Be a better person, not be ornery, not be cranky. I'm one of those that when I drop low, you might want to blow dart glucagon gun because I don't, it's really irritating for some of us when people go, you're wrong, you need to fix it, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
You ever had that?
Yep.
When somebody's trying to order you around, and here's the thing, what's going on in your head is, I'm low, I need to fix it. And then somebody starts talking to you, and you lose your whole train of thought and have to go start that whole process over, which is going to cause you to get lower. Well, old Bravo, because he actually had that high pack drive, and he liked me better when I smelt this way than I did when I was low. And he had figured out that if I ate something, I turned into the other person. Now, how? Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
I have theories, but I'm not going to jump in and say I can back everything I'm telling you 100% with science. I'm going to say, oh, and here's why. But I think there's a lot about the universe that science still hasn't caught up with. And one of them is the world.
Well, there's no clinical trials to say that eating is a necessity or breathing air.
Yeah.
But yet
exactly.
Everyone just assumes, yeah. Okay, interesting. So before we move ahead with some more interesting stuff, you kind of glossed over what Tattle Tails does. But what do you guys do? If someone...
So currently...
Yeah, literally.
Okay, so currently what I do is I handpick my mama dogs and my daddy dogs, and we go through all the genetic testing, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure that these are happy, healthy puppies within the world of science. And then I will have a litter of puppies that I will start working with very quickly. Many of the parents are working active diabetic alert dogs or service dogs of some kind, not all of them, but some of them. And I will work with them until they're between 8 and 10 weeks of age. And to date, I don't think I have sent a puppy home that has not alerted within the first 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's a raw alert, but they are picking up that there is something different, even at that tender of an age. And then...
What kind of alert did you say it is? A raw alert?
A raw alert.
What does that mean?
A raw alert means it's just something that the dog is doing that has been rewarded enough. So how is that lower high release? Well, mostly through sweat and our breath. There's a few that will focus in more on urine, but at the end of it, they have a big picture of all four of those components, and they become very accurate at it. But when they're babies, they're generally picking up one thing, a raw alert. The raw alert would be like you are breathing over them or they are smelling saliva, and they have something happened in their little brains, believe it or not, that said, hey, that smell got me a reward, usually food. And it turned on an area in their brain that the more we pattern that behavior and reward around that smell, the more they go, every time that smell is in the room, I'm going to get a reward. The problem is getting humans to recognize all of that and be willing to document and set down and do the hard work of every time you suspect that puppy is doing something outside of the ordinary. So, for example, we're dealing with a 10-week-old puppy. The puppy came home. It has slept through the night. For the first 5 nights, no problem. On night 6, puppy goes down, puppy is good, puppy's doing this, and at 1:30 in the morning, you wake up to, whoa, from the kennel, whoa, from the kennel. Oh, humans, I know what that means. He's got to go out. Oh, you stumble out of bed, you walk to the door, you put the puppy outside, and the puppy sits down and looks at you. And you're thinking, really? You want to play at 1:30 in the morning? Come on. Hurry up. Let's go. Let's do our business. So you work with them a little bit. Puppy finally is like, I'm not going to do it. So you go, I'm going back to bed. So you put the puppy back in the kennel. You crawl back into bed. And the puppy's been quiet, but then it starts the sounds again. And somewhere in your brain, you hear my voice say, that dog is doing something out of the ordinary. For 5 nights, he slept soundly through the night. Could I have a problem with my blood sugars? I will check. And you check, and you are 62, 240. And you pick up that puppy, and you look at him, and they're like, see, in their own little weird ways, I told you, and you fix it, and you thank them, and you all go back to sleep, and then you wake up in the morning and went, what just happened? That dog, while it's a baby, has patterned behaviors. And when they break those patterned behaviors, we need to be paying attention to why. Well, you're right. A lot of times when a new puppy wakes you up, it's they got to go out. Sometimes some of them are night owls and they do want to play.
Yeah.
But as a trainer, we're going to say, get them out, put them back to bed. If they want to play, you go, okay, you tried to go out, now go back to bed. I'm not playing. This is not playtime. And you've used every trick to get that puppy to settle down, and it's still on it. What is your blood sugar? And when you start seeing that happen, no, that 10-week-old is not a service dog yet, but do they know smell? Absolutely, because that's how dogs see the world. They see it through their nose, not their eyes, not their ears, their nose. When a puppy is born, they can't hear, they can't see. All they can do is smell. And if a human baby can come out of a mom and know its own mother, and they only have a few scent cells compared to a dog, which has between 225 million scent cells and 300 million scent cells. Come on. Those dogs know more about the world than we will ever know. And it's not us teaching them, it's them teaching us.
Yeah, well, it is a little bit off topic, but I wanted to ask you a question. I've interviewed a lot of dog scientists and dog people, So what would happen, do you think, if you exposed dogs to a new smell every day for a whole year? What do you think it would do to their brain? They had like 365 new smells that they've smelled after a year.
Okay, they do smell something new every day of the week. Where you're looking at is what was rewarded, okay? So, for example, kind of a disgusting topic, but we all know that most dogs love to go to the park and eat goose poop and duck poop.
Yeah, or cat
We
food.
are
Cat food.
grossed out by it, or cat food, right?
Yep.
But that's
Or even worse, if they eat cat food on your bed, which I've had happen. Wet cat food.
okay, so we get that, but that's gross to what we smell. But to that dog, they don't smell that. They smell that goose ate grass that they often themselves eat. They smell whatever it is. I mean, it could be they smell the beef that's in the cat food or the fish that's in the cat food. They break it down, and that fish is a reward to them. That grass is a reward. That's a good thing to do because my note says it's there.
Okay. Interesting. So I don't know. What if we up the numbers? What if you gave them like 10 new smells a day? You had like thousands of compounds and you had them smell them all, but you didn't do a reward or anything. You just, had them smell it, like the catalog in their brain. What do you think would happen?
So what I would say there, I would do that and then use the scent that I'm wanting them to alert on. And the only scent that I would alert on is the scent that I'm putting in there. So they smell 300 new scents, but the only one that got them the treat was the diabetic scent, the low scent, the high scent, whatever scent. That's called proofing.
Interesting. Well, you said, though, they don't like high sugar, for instance. So I'm sure there's some, like one time I remember I had wasabi with sushi and I tried to give my dog a little bit of wasabi and the dog literally curled its lips back. It retreated from it and curled its lips back. It looked so weird. I'm like, what are you doing?
Was that offended by the odor?
Yeah. So I guess naturally there's some sense that dogs are like, ooh, delicious, or some that are like, yeah, this is horrible.
In our world, a little bit of perfume or cologne is a good thing, but a lot of the same thing, it's offensive.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's like, ugh, they put too much on.
So that's how we got there, and that's how I ended up doing Tattle Tails. After they get their puppy, I work with them for a year via online classes. We go through all service dog stuff, work really hard at it. I have them sometimes work with people in their area that I know, and they continue to work towards training their service dogs. I have them do a mock service dog test because honestly, there is no certification in the service dog world, but
Really?
I really want my families to pave the way to leave the path better behind, because it's getting rough out there in that service dog world.
Oh, what do you mean? What's happening in it?
Well, there's more and more service dogs. When I first started doing this, I very seldom ran into a service dog team. Flying, now it's not uncommon to have 2 or 3 service dogs on a plane.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious which ones have had the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of training.
Yeah, that's what my daughter says. She's like, oh, that one is not a service dog. It's looking around, it's distracted, it's not focused, it's barking, and then some of them you could tell pretty easily they're really good, they're trained well.
Yep, because they deal very well with the dogs that aren't trained. They literally will turn their head and ignore them. So, yeah.
Well, okay. So how long does it take for someone to train a service dog? If they get a puppy from you, at least they're off to a good start, it sounds like. But how much effort and time is needed for a diabetic alert or seizure alert or, other kinds of alerts? How much work do they have to put in?
A lot. Did I say a lot? It's probably more than that.
So what is a lot? Like every day for a year? Or?
Absolutely. It's every day. And here's the problem. There is no such thing as a finished dog. They don't exist because are you ever finished? Not until the day we stop, not until the day we die. So how could we ever expect a dog to be finished? If you buy a started dog, it is pretty much guaranteed to you that you are going to spend the next 2 years learning how someone else taught your dog. Or you can spend roughly 2 years learning how your dog learns, learning how to counteract in the dog's world, and you're pretty much going. But I'm telling you, it's always and ever and ongoing till their last day. Bravo passed away. He was 12 years of age. And the day that I took him in, he had cancer really bad. And I took him into the vet, and I knew I had to keep control of my emotions, or that would cause my blood sugars to go weird. And so I was doing everything I knew, every trick I've ever learned about diabetes to keep myself level. They was getting ready to administer the pink fluid, and they had given him stuff to relax, and he got up off of the floor and tried to work.
Shame.
You know what? You get owned by a dog like that. Notice how I said that. When you get owned by a dog like that, you're going to look at the world a lot differently. The same year that I lost Bravo, I lost my mom to heart disease. I lost my sister to diabetes. I lost my best friend, and I lost my service dog. And the one that just about tore me apart was a 4-legged dog named Bravo. Yet it saved my life. He introduced thousands and thousands of people to what a dog can truly do, truly be, truly smell, and he left the world a better place. And, you know, wow, I've had people tell me my dog saved my life, but when you are laying on the floor and your blood sugar is 20 right next to the refrigerator and your body is using to work, and your dog goes and gets tabs, and thank goodness that you are somebody that tends to not put caps on things tight, and he carries that bottle over and squeezes it and pops the top off of it, you realize there's a world out there with dogs that we have not even begun to fathom.
That's really cool. Is there any research going on that you're aware of into answering all the questions that you have, about dogs?
There is, but I tend to have to, at this point in time in my life, I'm going to go off of what I've observed. I mean, I have access to have that many dogs right in front of me to play with. I mean, I know where the majority of my dogs are, so I get feedback from across the years, and that's kind of what I base what I go off of. There's some pretty good research. In fact, a friend of mine just sent it that was on, what was the name of it? It's one of the government ones. You see, the National Library of Medicine. There's an article on there that somebody just sent me that is pretty impressive. And the title of it is How Effective Are Trained Dogs at Alerting Their Owners to Changes in Blood Glycemic Levels and the Variations in Performance of Glycemia Alert Dogs.
Okay.
And it was published in 2019. There's some stuff out there, but as I said, there's a big university back east, Penn State, I believe it is, that is really doing some pretty exciting things with scent dogs. I haven't had a chance to follow them as closely as I would like.
Yeah.
But if people want and need a diabetic alert dog, service dog, I truly believe that if they are willing to put their nose to the grindstone, that they shouldn't have to pay $26,000 for a service.
Because they do the training themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's because that's how the dogs see the world. It's through their nose.
Right.
By the same token, I've also ran across people that thought they could buy a dog's love and devotion. You can't do that either. But if you want it, it needs to be obtainable. And from somebody that's lived with medical stuff, having to pay more for a 3-month supply of insulin than there is a casket than a casket is at Costco. That's wrong.
That's
And
terrible.
I couldn't afford that dog if I didn't have insurance. Even if I have my insurance, I still would have never been able to pay that kind of money for a dog. That's more than a car is.
So Tattle Tails provides a way for people to, get a trained, at least a trained diabetic alert puppy, and then with work,
yes,
make a full-fledged service dog.
they can have a full-fledged service.
Okay.
And then also out of that, a group of people got together because of my and Bravo's story and started a nonprofit called Bravo's Kindred Canines that are trying to help people get service dogs, but we are focusing more on self-trained because we want people to put time and the effort, and we're taking a load off of the finance a little. So that's a nonprofit that is doing a lot of good. They help people that want to train their dog become a diabetic alert dog, mobility dogs. There's a lot of needs for.
Yeah. What are all the possible needs? So it's like diabetic alert, seizures.
Mostly what
else?
Tattle's focus on is diabetes. I've done some stuff that I can't even pronounce, but it was scent-based, and we've done cortisol, adrenal, gluten, peanuts. I've helped people with heart dogs that will alert to heart arrhythmia. My big thing is that you have to be able to do something to make it better or to remove, or it should allow you to take action to improve the situation. Because if you put a dog in a situation where you're low and you don't fix it and you just keep going down, we're lying to the dog. So we have to be diligent. Remember early on I was talking about alerting comes in stages. Hey, there's a problem. I smell something. Then there can be a stage 2 of what is it you're smelling? Will you differentiate between a high and a low and ketone? But the third piece, and it's the most, is we have to remember to say thank you. Thank you for giving us gift of your nose.
Oh, so like rewarding with a treat or a hug or a petting?
Yeah, reward with whatever the dog values the most and saying thanks. Man, I wish we all lived in the dog's world, huh?
Yeah, I know. It's a simpler, nicer world. Well, very good. The time's just about out, but Casey, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? Where can they go?
To Tattle Tail Scent Dogs, go to www.tattle, TATTLETAIL, Scent Dogs, SCENTDOGS.com, or you can go and learn more from Bravo's, BRAVOS, Kindred, KINDRE, canines.org.
Okay, excellent. Well, Casey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a really great call. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and have your daughter, if she ever have questions, reach out to me. I'm more than willing to talk.
Excellent.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.